Why is it making that sound?
Feedback. Maybe it's
Subscribe, comment, share. Y'all know the routine. Let me stop. What's going on? What's going on? It's Dontaye Carter with Beyond the Brand right here on Hits 92.3, brought to you by Carter Media Group and TOV Digital Media. So thankful and grateful that you all can join us. And I'm excited about today's interview because we have no... I don't even know how to bring this brother in. You know, I was about to go into this whole long spiel, but you know what? Y'all know who it is. It's the Justice Fighter. It's Gerald Griggs. And I'm excited about the new project that he has going on. It is Copwatch America, going to be airing on BET this Wednesday at 11 p.m. Gerald, thank you for jumping in, my brother. I appreciate you coming on.
anytime, brother. Thank you for having me on Beyond the Brand here on Hits 92.3.
Thank you. So tell us about Copwatch.
Man, Copwatch is going to be a docu-series following activists who are trying to elevate the voices of families who've been affected by police brutality and police violence. So it's going to be based in both New York and Atlanta, following two different groups of activists as they elevate the case of Eric Garner, Veltavius Griggs, Jimmy Atchison, Oscar Kane, Jamarian Robinson, and Nicholas Bolton, and a host of other cases. So they are going to be bringing it live, real, raw, and uncut, the good, the bad, and the ugly of activism, but we're going to elevate these families' voices.
And, you know, we know you've been in activism for some time. Tell us a little bit about how you got into it.
Man, I've been an activist since 1999. Our first active protest was at Emory University, where we were trying to get the Confederate flag taken down, and we got together on a protest on the quad and was successful in getting the Confederate flag taken down before Georgia changed their state flag. So that was the first event of activism. Then I went off to law school, the University of Cincinnati, and had the pleasure of working on the Cincinnati Can Commission on Police Brutality.
Wow.
There were numerous police shootings in Cincinnati in 2001 and 2002, and we were part of the Can Commission to see if we could solve that problem. And then I became an attorney. And so I've been on the front lines for a long time, almost 15, almost 18 years. But it's been an honor to work for the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia as vice president of the NAACP on both levels. And we've just been fighting for these families, whether it's the Cartersville 70, whether it was Jamarian Robinson situation, whether it was so many others. There's so many cases that I've worked on, you know, at APS, you know, the Women's March here in Atlanta, so many different things that I have lended my voice and struggle. But the main goal has been police brutality. We led the largest Black Lives Matter march in 2016, which was the NAACP Black Lives Matter march after Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were killed, that brought 15,000 people to the streets and turned into a 7-day protest.
Wow. But, one of the things that I love about what you do is, we say activism and we talk a lot about police brutality, but that's not the extent of what you've done. I mean, we're talking about being a part of the Women's March, standing side by side with women across Georgia. We're talking about standing alongside the Savage family in their fight to get Joycelyn back. There's been so many different things that you've been on, and that's one of the things that I particularly like about what you've done is you're about justice regardless of color, gender, and
sexual orientation.
Sexual orientation. Yeah, and I mean that's the biggest thing because there are a lot of people who say they're activists, but their only activism is on one issue.
Yes.
When you think about justice has to be across the board. It can't just be justice for black people or justice for women. It has to be across the board, and that's one of the things that I admire that you've been able to do. How have you been able to do that?
Well, being born and raised in Atlanta, the birthplace of civil rights, I've always had a keen eye towards civil rights and social justice for everyone because I believe that in order for any one person to be free, we all must be free.
Yeah.
So, like you said, I've been on the front lines of the Atlanta March for Social Justice and Women. Been on the front lines of Black Lives Matter. Been on the front lines of voting rights for all individuals.
March for Our Lives.
March for Our Lives. It's just so many that I've lost count. Of course, the situation with reproductive justice, with the heartbeat bill, and so many other things. And I think the crux of it is I want to make sure that rights are expanded and not subtracted from people.
Yeah.
And so that's why I get involved. And, as an attorney, I believe that everyone should be able to have rights and to protect those rights under the Constitution. So that's one of the reasons why I get involved in so many of these issues, because where I see injustice, I want to make sure justice flourishes.
And that's powerful, but I think what's even more powerful is you just don't wake up one day and say, I want to fight for justice. That has to come from somewhere. Where do you think your earliest beginnings when it comes to that fight for justice started?
I think from my dad. I think he always taught me, you have to be dedicated towards something and that goal, and then, fight for that goal. And I've been dedicated to justice as long as I can remember. So, he always told me, Gerald, there's going to come a time when you're a grown-up that you're going to have to fight for others. And so I think that's what burns deep inside. And then, of course, being a father, my daughter, I want to see her in a place that's better than the place that I am. So, I don't want to see a world where she has to be subservient to anyone and have to worry about her rights being rolled back. So, I look at those two individuals as my inspiration. And, of course, my mother, she's the one who made me the man that I am. As far as my compassion is concerned. So those individuals are the ones that drive me. Of course, my lovely wife, who keeps me grounded.
Yeah.
But that's why I do what I do, and that's where I get the passion from.
Yeah. And so, coming back to Copwatch, when this idea was first came to you, what were you thinking? They're talking about watching cops. But for you, it's so much more than just watching cops. There's an element of accountability that must come along with that. So when they approach you with this idea, what are you thinking?
Well, I've always had a penchant for holding police officers accountable. I'm a public defender, so I defend individuals who've been accused, many of them falsely, by law enforcement. So I come with that background. I was concerned at first because, it was pitched to be on BET, so I didn't want this to be a reality show. I wanted it to be a solution-based docu-series, and I think that it will be.
Yeah.
But my thing is I wanted to show people the problem and then the solution.
Yeah.
Because there is a solution, and that's the Obama 21st Century Policing Initiative, which was convened, a task force was convened right after Ferguson, and a report with 92 recommendations and 6 pillars was put out in May of 2015. And since May of 2015, I've been trying to get people, particularly police officers and police departments, to fully implement that plan. So I thought this was the perfect platform to bring it to the nation on a national platform with the cases that people have not really heard a lot about. So when it was pitched to me, I was a little hesitant at first, but then once I talked to the other activists that had been contacted, I thought it would be a good idea to lend my voice as an attorney, but also as an activist, how we attained solutions. Because, I mean, many people are highlighting the problem.
Yeah.
We all know what the problem is. I think an individual said that in a press conference. We all know what the problem is. Well, my question is, are we going to solve this problem? And if we are, I want to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've listened to a few interviews, and I've heard you speak multiple times about Obama's 21st Century Policing Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about that initiative that stands out to you that says, okay, this is a solution, this is something that we can use to really work on mediating this problem?
I think the biggest thing was the fact that it brought both sides together with professionals, activists, law enforcement, lawyers, judges, career bureaucracy individuals to deal with the problem at its micro and macro levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has things that deal with training and officer wellness. It deals with new technology. It deals with rebuilding community trust. And it also deals with de-escalation tactics that are actually effective. And so I think it covers all the spectrum of the issues that we find in these police-involved shootings and these police-involved brutality cases. And having dealt with so many, you know, whether it's Brittany Lucio's case, which was at the Houston's, started the Houston's boycott, or Maggie Thomas's case, which was the swiftest that Atlanta police officer has been fired 8 days after the incident. I have a keen knowledge of how you solve this problem. It's one, accountability. We have to send some police officers to prison. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. And then two, it's rebuilding the public trust by policy and procedures that ensure transparency, whether that's body cams, whether that's task force that investigate law enforcement, because I believe there's a culture that tries to not cover up, but tries to diminish what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so I think that Obama's plan covers all of those in the 6 pillars. And when I first saw it, I was just like, wow, this is a solution.
Yeah.
Why aren't more people talking about this? And then I started having conversations with law enforcement, and they were like, yeah, this is a solution. And so my question to them was, well, why haven't you fully implemented it? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, it hasn't been put into legislation to mandate it across the country. Well, we need to do something about that. Well, it hadn't been fully implemented in the cities because there's no ordinances that fully mandate it. Well, we need to do something about that. And so I started seeing the disconnect. You know, many times police want to go into the communities and have a conversation. We're done talking.
Clippers and cops.
We all know what the issue is.
Yeah.
We need to address the issue with the policymakers and the decision makers to change the policies so that we can fix this problem. Again, I know what the design of law enforcement is. I know what the design of the laws. But when we have a problem or a breakdown, we can always change that.
So what do you say to the people who say, okay, this is too much government?
I say we're having too much death. And so I think, you know, the purpose of government is to make sure we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we need more government to make sure that everyone has life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we need more government.
Yeah.
So they're not killing individuals in certain communities. They're killing them in mainly one community.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to hear the limited government is good for everybody until they stop killing brown and black folks.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point, and it's a very good point, because when I'm looking on social media and I see individuals who don't look like me, mm-hmm. who are kicking police officers, throwing rocks at them, even hitting them with cars,
chasing them naked with AR-15,
and they're not attacked in the same manner as people mm-hmm. who look like me. When I see individuals who have just walked into a club and murdered 10, 20 people, mm-hmm. and then they just hand the gun to police officers, go to Burger King, and then they go to jail.
Yeah.
You know, when do we really start to have that conversation about the value of life in this country? Because I think that's a heavy part of this conversation.
I think we're starting to have that conversation, and it's a conversation the country doesn't want to have. That's why we have to have shows like Copwatch to put it plainly in the national conversation on a platform where everyone will see it.
Yeah.
So I think it's past time to have that conversation. I think this series will do that. But I also think it's going to make some people uncomfortable. because there are certain politicians that look like us that don't want to have this conversation. And that's a shame when you look like us and you run on a platform that is
For us.
pro us,
Yeah.
but you don't address the issues that we have.
And that's in my opinion, that's just a big part of this equation, because you look at Dr. King, you look at the individuals who fought and gave their lives to the movement. That whole movement made people uncomfortable.
It did.
So uncomfortable that a lot of his quotes aren't even recited to this day.
Exactly.
So what do you want to encourage people to do that sit down and watch this documentary?
I want them to sit down with an open mind and watch all 10 episodes. There's going to be some drama. Of course, it's entertainment, so they got to have a little bit of drama. I try not to participate in the drama. But I want them to take a real hard look at the issue that these families are facing and the pain, and then ask themselves, why am I not a part of the solution? Because it shouldn't have to happen to you for you to become a part of the solution. And then what can I do? There are going to be some solutions in this series that you can implement immediately, that you can become an activist, and you don't have to march and protest to be an activist. You can pick up the phone and call your local elected official. You can go down to their office. You can email them and say, hey, this is a real problem. If we can fix scooters in the city of Atlanta in 3 days, we can address the 90 or so cases that I know of. 26 are still open cases of police-involved shootings over the last 2 years. And so police-involved shootings and brutality cases over the last 2 years. And I mean, especially in Atlanta, and that's why I wanted Atlanta featured. A lot of people believe this is not a problem in Atlanta. We don't have these issues. That's not true. I mean, Jamarian Robinson's family can tell you that. Oscar Kane's family can tell you that. Jimmy Atchison's family can tell you that. Veltavius Griggs' family. And there's just so many others. Alexia Christian.
DeAndre Phillips.
DeAndre Phillips, Deatrick Griffin.
Yeah.
It's so many.
Yeah.
And so we have to come to grips with the fact that Dr. King was talking about this in the March on Washington, but it's still a problem in the place that's his birthplace.
And at the funeral of Jimmy Lee Jackson as well, who was gunned down by law enforcement. So, yeah, man, I totally understand where you're coming from, and the issues that have all really, they're spilling out of their seams at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the young folks who want to get involved, want to mobilize, aren't sure how? Where do they start? Where do they even begin?
I think they start by watching the series because you're going to get a lot of tips on what organizing really looks like, and then you got to get connected with an organization. You can start an organization. You can become a part of a legacy organization. You can become a part of a grassroots organization. I myself am a part of the NAACP, which is the oldest civil rights organization in the country, which was started to combat lynchings. And what we are witnessing today are modern lynchings.
So, speaking of the NAACP, let's go back to this point, because so many times you're hearing what nowadays? NAACP doesn't do
anything. Where are they? Blah, blah, blah. All of that.
What do you say to people about the work? Because you're heavily involved with them
Yes.
now. So what do you say to people about the work that the NAACP is doing?
I say that we're doing a lot of work. When you see the election of Doug Jones over in Alabama, when you see the almost attempted election of Stacey Abrams, the people that were organizing were the branches of the NAACP to mobilize people to vote. So just because we don't get all of the press, we are doing the work. And a lot of your national organizers started in the NAACP or still in the NAACP. And so just because it doesn't have NAACP on it doesn't mean when you see maybe Black Lives Matter marches or you see Women's marches, they all are contacting, especially here in Georgia, the NAACP to get the training and the knowledge and the logistical support to do these things. I mean, March for Our Lives. We were a part of the organizing of March for Our Lives here in Georgia. So what I would say to people is, yeah, maybe we should brand ourselves a little bit better and say, oh, this was an NAACP march. But that's not the purpose of the NAACP. We've always been in the background holding up the infrastructure. So I think if people get involved and they start hearing the names across the nation, you will start to see they are connected through the association.
So I saw you dropping the receipts there.
Oh, yeah.
a bigger question is, should you guys shine more light on your work?
I think so. I think it's time for the NAACP to be a little bit more bold and brash in telling people directly what we're doing. Our voice, our vote, that was the voter initiative drive that turned out all the people in Georgia.
Yeah.
And so, we need to brand ourselves and be real honest and transparent. Look, we are the oldest, the boldest, the coldest, the most cussed and discussed organization in the country. Mm-hmm. When we tweet the president, he doesn't tweet back. We were the first ones to call for the impeachment of Donald J. Trump. We were the first ones to call him to the convention. Say, hey, we've called him to 3 conventions.
Yeah.
He's never showed up. We can get any elected official to come have a conversation with us, and if they don't, they're going to have a real problem. So I think what we have to do as the NAACP is just to make sure that the younger generation fully understands the history and the scope, both recent and distant past. We are still the most viable civil rights and social justice organization. Again, we put on the Black Lives Matter march here in Atlanta that brought 15,000. We are the ones that have been integral to the resistance.
Yeah.
So I just need people to understand that, we may have a slight branding problem because we don't slap the letters on everything. But once you get into the inner workings of it, you start to see. We're the ones that sued Brian Kemp 6 times.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are fighting to make sure we have paper ballots. We're the ones who are making sure that we revamp the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
I love Van and the rest of them, but you got to understand, we have over 1,500 branches. You can't go to small towns in rural America and fight civil rights without the NAACP.
Facts. Yeah. So let me ask you this. When it comes to these movements, I see a lot of movements, right, that lack, how am I going to word this, but don't have the presence of an attorney there with them. Do you see that as helpful or hurtful when it comes to fighting for rights?
I think it's hurtful because in order to change rights, you have to go to the vehicle that gives rights, and that's the law.
Yeah.
And so what good is it to protest in the streets if you're not looking for policy and legal change?
Yeah.
Because that is what we're fighting against. In the police brutality cases, we're fighting a 1989 Supreme Court case.
Let's talk about that case.
The Gresham case. So basically, it laid down the standard of reasonable fear, and it's a reasonable fear doctrine. So basically, a police officer, if they have a reasonable and subjective fear that their life may be in danger, they're given the benefit of the doubt, and you can't hold them accountable, and that's the issue. And so this subjective reasonable fear is not about what the average police officer would feel. It's about what that police officer felt at that moment. And so that's why we're seeing the rash of these police-involved shootings. And so just like the Brown case, which overturned the Dred Scott decision, which was separate but equal, and Jim Crow, we have to have a Supreme Court case to overturn the Gresham decision. And so I think that's what people need to understand. And they also need to understand in the civil rights movement, there were lawyers in the civil rights movement.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of black attorneys.
A lot of black attorneys, particularly one in Alabama who's still here, Fred Gray.
Yeah.
And Thurgood Marshall, who was a part of the NAACP, who's actually the head of the NAACP Legal Defense.
Yeah.
And so when you understand that the activists never moved without legal counsel either with them or advising them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a disservice to any movement that's not seeking wise legal counsel in any of their actions or their potential campaigns.
So what is it that people of color face right now? What's the biggest threat to people of color right now?
It's a lot. It's basically the same thing we've been facing since the beginning. Access to economic movement, legal challenges as far as your rights are concerned, and then environmental justice issues, where would people live, and the water and the air. So it's a lot of issues, but I think the main issue is the ability to have access to economic resources to move them to a better place in their lives.
But you know, my biggest thing has always been, how do you even get to a place of having that conversation? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even get there? Because I was sitting down and I was watching a CNN special, and they were talking about, in that top 10% of America, it's starting to change in terms of more black people are getting into that group.
Mm-hmm.
And they interviewed one of the black guys. He made his money off real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And he said one of the things that he struggles with the most is when he hears people say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, you're asking folks to pull themselves up by something that they don't even own.
Yeah, I mean, you can't pull yourself up from your bootstraps when you don't have any shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's always interesting to hear somebody, especially like him, in a place that he's been able to get to,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that, yeah, there are a lot of hurdles here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's a conversation we've always been told we don't work hard enough. Like, you don't work hard enough. You don't work hard enough. And then you get to places like we're in, and you realize, oh, it's a who you know and
there are structural impediments to success.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what people need to understand is when you are blessed with access to the highest offices in the land and the conversations that most people aren't privy to, you bring your life experiences as well.
It's true.
I think a lot of people of color and minorities, particularly black people, forget where they come from when they get up there.
Yeah.
And that's one thing my dad always taught me. You never forget where you come from, because the same people you see on the way up are the same people you're going to see on the way down.
Yeah.
And if you are truly about empowering the community, you lend hands up more than you take handouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, what we as minorities need to understand is it's a global conversation now. So the minorities aren't really the minorities.
And that's the craziest part, because what I'm really starting to see is the greatest threat to white supremacy is the internet. You know what I'm saying? It's not me, it's not you, it's the internet, because the internet has given us access
to other
that
people.
For centuries we didn't have. We didn't have that access. If it wasn't in the books around us, we couldn't find it.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that, now with the global conversation happening, we can connect with like-minded individuals in different places that are part of the diaspora.
Yeah.
And start comparing notes.
Yeah.
And once you start comparing notes, you start seeing, wait a minute.
There was a number done
the
here.
The way we think should change.
Yeah.
There should be a shift. Like many people tell me, Griggs, you can't fight, structural racism and these issues because you won't win.
Yeah.
And then I start looking at other people's history, and I'm like, wait, they won. And wait, they won. And they won. And they all started winning right around the 60s.
Yeah.
And what was going on during the 60s? I think there was some confident black people from the South.
Yeah.
Who decided they weren't going to take it anymore.
Yeah. And then, right, what else was happening? You had 50 other countries around the world of African descent.
And that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, this is, when you look at all those things that were happening, they were all happening at the same time. And I think, if you look at civilization in its totality, the people that you step on, right, eventually they get
tired of being stepped on.
Yeah. And they stand up and say, all right, look, you can walk wherever you want to, but it ain't going to be on me.
Yeah.
That's just what it comes down to.
And I think what America needs to understand is that at some point, that American dream needs to be expanded to everybody. Because, black people have been working hard a long time.
Yeah.
We built this country, period. And so when you understand what your ancestors were able to do in the oppressive condition that they were in, it takes away your excuses. And so, now it's, okay, so if Harriet and Frederick and Martin and Malcolm and Julian and Hosea got us to this point, what am I going to do to move the ball forward? Because we're not at the goal line. Our goal line.
Yeah.
We may be at like our own 20.
Yeah.
And we got 80 yards to go. I'm not focusing on the 20 yards that we got here. I'm focused on the 80 yards we got to go.
Yeah.
So either you on my team or you on the defense.
And I think the reality is the American dream has only been a dream for folks that don't look like us. For everybody else, it's been an American nightmare.
It's been a dark night.
Yeah.
But, like everybody always says, it's darkest right before the dawn. At some point, as the minority in this country, we won't be the minority too much longer.
But I mean, even think about this, right? This flip side. Who would have ever thought, right, that slavery would have ended over greed?
I don't think anybody would have thought that, or,
Greed.
yeah, I mean, or that,
You got free labor and you worried about what the next man got in his pocket, which
I just think that the country needs to understand that once people had access to education and people had access to all the books, they were going to find out the great secret that this was never about anything else but financial gain.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, well, I can either pick myself up and teach myself what's been hidden to me and then act on it, or I can continue to complain. Now, I'm not saying that, you can pull yourself up from your bootstraps, because that's a lie.
Yeah.
But you can start to build generational wealth so that the next generation does have a pair of shoes.
Well, it starts with somebody saying, this isn't my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it starts. The minute somebody says this isn't my life and I'm going to go and build the life that's for me, that's when the game starts to change. Because I think the system as it was created understood that there were going to be some minorities that were going to peep game and not get caught up in the system.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just
caught up in the distractions.
And the distractions. I don't think we're at the peep game stage anymore. It's like I peep game, I see game. Now what are you going to do with the information you have? That's where we're at. I mean, this is the day and age of information.
It's
Data
right at your fingertips.
Data has already surpassed oil in terms of revenue that it's bringing in. They want to know everything that they can about you.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to know all this information about you, why can't you desire to know this information about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with you, brother. And that's why we're putting out Copwatch. We're trying to put out the solution to the problem. Yeah. I'm tired of law enforcement saying we don't know how to deal with it. Yes, you do. You know how to deal with this. You know how to weed bad apples from the bunch. And there are a lot of good police officers. And I want to say this on the platform and say this on the internet. There are a lot of good police officers.
Yeah, a lot of great ones.
But now we're going to shift this narrative. But there are also some bad ones that need to go to prison. And we need the police unions to stop protecting the bad ones because you give the good ones a bad name by doing that.
What do they have to lose by doing that outside of gaining more of the public's trust?
Nothing. I mean, at that point, we might be able to get back to the days of us trusting Officer Friendly. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, all black people want to do is be able to live. I mean, at this point, we're afraid to live in our own houses because you may be playing a video game at 2:30 in the morning and a police officer who doesn't announce themselves shoots you and then blames you.
Or you could be walking back to your car.
Walking back to your car. You could be in the car with a registered gun with your girlfriend and your fiance and your baby in the back. You get shot because you were telling them, hey, I got a gun, and they shoot you. You could easily be at a convenience store and there'd be a misunderstanding and they shoot you. You could have a box of Skittles and iced tea and they shoot you.
You could have an air freshener up and they think you got weed in the car, so
and
they
pull
shoot
you
over. Yeah, it's
a lot.
It's a lot. So look, we're going to get ready to wrap it up here. What's your message to the people?
My message is October the 23rd, which is Wednesday, 11 o'clock. Please tune in to BET Copwatch. Copwatch America. It's going to be an interesting ride. My hope is the takeaway from this is we have the solutions to police-involved shootings and police brutality, and that we can move forward together in a collective manner to solve these problems. Again, there's going to be a little bit of drama, but, it's on BET, so there's going to be a little bit of drama, but focus on the message. And the message is this. We have the solutions. It's Obama's 21st Century Policing Initiative. Take it to your local law enforcement agency the next time they have clippers and cops or donuts with a cop or run a 5K with a police officer. Let's focus on actually solving the problem and then have a conversation with your mayor and your city council about implementing the policies.
And where can folks find you at?
All social media at Attorney Griggs. On all social media at Attorney Griggs or under the hashtag Justice Fighter. You'll find me, or wherever there's a protest, I'll probably be there.
Oh, man, thank you so much for joining us right here on Hits 92.3. Everybody, I am Dontaye Carter with Beyond the Brand. It's brought to you by Carter Media Group and our partners over at TOV Digital Media. We want to thank you all for tuning in today. If you're following us on YouTube, remember, like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know your thoughts. And we're going to keep it going, grinding all our life. Peace.